Hello, everyone. We'd like to welcome you today to the community hearing on homelessness, housing, and hunger. I want to thank everyone for attending today to hear both from our hearing panel, which is made up of elected officials and decision makers and commissioners, as well as the folks who are testifying today, both with lived experience and who work in advocacy. So today we are going to hear opinions and ideas on how to address some of the most dire situations, both here in Los Angeles and in the state of California. California has over 161,000 people who are homeless in the state. There are a lot of people who are hungry and need to utilize food banks in order to survive. And there are lots of children who go to sleep hungry every night. And we are facing a housing crisis here, both an affordable housing crisis as well as renters who are rent burdened and having trouble paying rent. So I'm so excited today to have our moderator here, who is Tammy Mack. And she is the #1 afternoon radio personality in Los Angeles with African American audiences on Radio Free 102.3 KJLH. She also hosts her own television show, the Tammy Mack Late Show, on KCOP Channel 13 at 6 p.m. and nightly on the digital platform. So please tune in, Fox Soul TV. She is a 3-time NAACP award-winning actress, and her nonprofit, Tam Talks, serves to inspire and uplift women through the arts. One of those productions has been commissioned by the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Thank you. This is a production of Housing as a Human Right, as well as AIDS Healthcare Foundation, and toured nationally to bring awareness to AIDS, HIV. Follow Tammy Mack on Instagram at The Tammy Mack Show, and it is my very great pleasure to introduce Tammy Mack from KJLH.
Hello, everybody. We live in such a new world now. I'm from the South, and you know, we are like we're so hospitable. I feel weird doing all this new stuff. It's just wearing masks and sanitizing everything. Can you hear me clearly now? Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'd like to think this is a good day because we're here to talk and to come to some solutions about the homeless issues in Los Angeles County. And so this is a good day to be able to talk to each other and to testify about how we can help, what we can do, and what the problem is. So let's look at this as a good thing today, y'all. It's a good thing. So let's start with this good thing. I tell you, my mother-in-law's like, oh, Lord, she lives in Memphis, Tennessee. Oh, Lord, I just don't know about L.A. I mean, you know, down there in California over there, y'all got all them homeless people. And I'm like, listen, there are solutions, and we're working on them. Just like there are problems in other places and areas, and you're working on them. So let's not be so judgmental. Only I didn't say that out loud because she's my mother-in-law. So let me introduce to you today the hearing board. We have Senator Henry Stern. Senator Henry Stern represents nearly 1 million residents of the 27th Senate District. Stern has chaired the Senate Natural Resources and Water Committee since 2018 and sits on the Senate's Budget, Environmental Quality, Judiciary, and Energy, Utilities, and Communications Committees, as well as the Budget Subcommittee on Resources, Environmental Protection, and Energy. He is exploring new ways to combat chronic homelessness and hunger issues. Henry, Senator Stearns?
Let's go with Henry.
Okay.
Let's do that, because we're actually in a room together, and it feels very good to be here.
Yes, it does.
So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Do you want me to say something? Or you
Yeah. Say a little something.
Oh, this is the opening monologue.
This is the opening monologue.
All right.
It's your time to shine, Henry.
I'm on with the DJ though. I'm nervous with a radio host to prompt me. I don't quite have.
That's okay. Just think in your mind, I'll never be as good as her, so just do the best you can.
I'm nervous. I gotta tell you. All right. Let me just humble myself then, and I'll shoot for 3. I just want to say that I appreciate that we're kicking off today talking about food insecurity and talking about hunger, because we don't think about this bottom piece of the puzzle falling out enough when we talk about housing insecurity or housing affordability or our homelessness epidemic. We leave out the driving factor that food insecurity plays, and that the systemic development of Los Angeles and the deserts that have emerged in our public health infrastructure to serve communities in poverty, communities of color, that manifests itself in hunger every single day. We are the epicenter of the hunger crisis in the United States of America in terms of quantity, and you may not realize that walking around every day, or maybe you do, and you don't think of it as hunger. Even in the most seemingly affluent slices of our society, you'd think UCLA students, the top of their class in high school, living in their car, maybe getting a meal a day. Our food banks are no longer, through this pandemic, we realize that infrastructure is not just for people on the streets, but it's for people who are so close to that edge that we're looking after today, right? It's so close to falling off that cliff. And the only thing there to catch them is this incredible infrastructure that I hope we're going to hear from today. You know, our regional food banks, from a state perspective, they've been backbone for us to get through this crisis. And I think the fallout of this pandemic would have been a lot worse for seniors isolated at home, for students and young people who are displaced, as well as for the unhoused, our unhoused neighbors. And so, you know, with that infrastructure in place, plus a new investment in CalFresh and our SNAP programs, we're making historic investments at the state level right now. I mean, we've never actually endeavored to tackle the problem with this speed and scale before, but I truly think that here in LA County, we've got the apparatus to get it done. The faith community plays a huge piece. Obviously, the county workers who are out there sussing out the problems, our IHSS and social workers on the front lines detecting the issues. If we kind of integrate all those services, so you just need to walk into that one front door that feels comfortable to you. And it may be your school down the street. It may not be a county office. It may not be going to a traditional social services agency. We got to meet people where they are when it comes to hunger, and we got to destigmatize that issue, because the long-term public health impacts are a form of systemic racism, period. You have to say that, because the numbers don't lie. The numbers don't lie in the impact. And you can talk about the cause, but the actual outcomes and the disparities are completely unignorable. So I'm hoping we make a dent, and we hear from some brilliant folks here today. But Tammy, thank you for giving me the chance to join you.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah.
So Mayor Sue Himmelrich has represented the city of Santa Monica since 2014 and was recently elected as the mayor. She has advocated for affordable housing in Santa Monica, spearheaded the POD program to keep rent-controlled apartments. She's a champion for our homeless community, working for several years with Western Center on Law and Poverty. Mayor Sue.
Thank you. Ditto what Henry said, but I know we're having 3 programs on hunger, homelessness, and housing, but the truth is they're all part of the same program, which is the wealth inequity in our culture. And you can't really separate them. We have a program for minimum income that creates minimum income for seniors living in rent-controlled apartments. And I always say we help them so they don't eat cat food at the end of the month, because basically you shouldn't have to make a choice between eating a meal and paying your rent, or paying your rent and a doctor bill. 25% of the children in this state go to bed hungry every night, and that's even with all of these programs we're doing. But we have unhoused children. And so we say housing is a human right. Well, I think you'll agree that food is a human right. Safety is a human right. All of these are human rights that have long been denied people because of wealth inequities in our society. I've been working on this for many, many years outside of elected politics. I'm serving what I believe will be my last term now. I always said I would do this for 8 years, but I'm so happy to see activists out here who will continue to do the work, and thank you all very much for what you do.
Thank you, Mayor Himmelrich. John Erickson is a West Hollywood City Council member. West Hollywood City Council member John Erickson's advocacy work includes serving a national board member of the National Organization for Women and president of the ACLU Southern California. In 2017, he became Governor Brown's appointee to the California Commission on the Status of Women and Girls and served as an organizer for both the Resist March and the historic Women's March Los Angeles that year. He serves on the board of the Women's March Los Angeles Foundation and is championing hunger and housing issues within the city of West Hollywood. John?
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. It's so great to be here with you all. My name is John Erickson. I'm sorry I sound like Harvey Fierstein for the moment. I want to say, as the youngest member of the City Council, recently elected, hunger and food insecurity is a really deeply personal issue to me because that's exactly how I got started in activism way back when in Ripon, Wisconsin, with my grandmother who ran our local food pantry. Ripon, Wisconsin is the birthplace of the Republican Party. I like to call it the Abe Lincoln Republican Party, but we'll diverge from politics for that moment. But she always told me one thing that's always stuck with me. A fed community is a happy community. It never mattered who walked through that door, no matter who it was. It's a very small town, so we all knew each other. She would never ask any questions, and she would make sure every person went home fed because you never knew where or how that would impact the rest of their lives. That's stuck with me throughout my entire activism, my entire life, and I'm deeply honored to serve the people of the city of West Hollywood, where we are an interesting little city. We're 1.89 square miles. We're 36,000 people, so we're very dense, and so there's a lot of people. But disproportionately, when you look at our statistics, we have a large proportion of individuals who are LGBTQ. 46% of our city actually identifies in the LGBTQ family. We have a large proportion of seniors, people with disabilities, and also people living with HIV/AIDS. We are that city that was founded in 1984, so we're a young city compared to my friend to the right here. And so what we do is so important because we contract for a lot of our services. COVID-19 hit our city and our residents extremely hard, like it did everywhere else. We were having our food delivery service programs at triple the capacity. Right now, this past Monday, we got an update from Project Angel Food, who we've always contracted with for many of our residents who rely on that. I deliver meals with Project Angel Food with our Mayor Lindsay Horvath, who you will see later today, and talk to our residents, and they are really always scared about where they would get their next meal. And that's important. Right now, they are at 136% of their goal based on our last report. And if you look at where we are and then where we were in the pandemic, that number has come down a little bit, but when it was in the middle of everything, they were getting an influx of city cash and resources because the need for drivers, people to pack the food and everything that we did was quite incredible. We also contract with Seeds of Hope as well as other regional food banks. SOVA unfortunately had to leave our city, but now I'm really happy they'll be back after the pandemic in our Kings Road Park, giving food out to a lot of our residents. This is something that also I, as a younger individual, although I identify as much older when it feels when you serve on a city council, I know what it's like to not be able to pay for groceries. I know what it's like to have a good nonprofit job. I'm very honored to work for Planned Parenthood Los Angeles here, but I know what it's like to have to say and put things back on the shelves. And I know what that's like for 50% of our city who is under the age of 40. They too have high rents, housing issues. They're afraid of becoming homelessness, especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, where we saw a large amount of people fear where their next rent payment would come from. But all these issues are connected. All these issues are intersectional, and it's something that we have to approach very carefully and diligently to not only ensure our city services are going to those most in need, but also to those people who, in my opinion, are afraid to ask for help. I know many of my friends who will eat ramen at the end of the day, and that's all they'll live on, and they'll go to work and they'll do everything, and they don't know where they're going to get their next meal sometimes. So we continue to partner with JFS Nutrition and all of our other social service contractors is super important to the city. That's how we do a lot of our work, and so really looking forward to today's discussion and hearing, and always open to making sure you all know, as providers and individuals who are experiencing this, where you can go to in the city of West Hollywood to provide services or to be a part of the services that we provide. Thank you so much.
Gotta love those grandmothers, huh, John? My grandmother and I gave food to the homeless as well. So when you said that, it immediately took me back to Ebenezer Methodist Church in Houston, Texas, where we were handing out food to the homeless.
My grandmother and I would go do that, and then we would be a part of the Harmonica Rascals, where she played the harmonica, and she taught me to play the harmonica afterwards. So it was always a fun time at the Ripon Senior Center.
Yeah, gotta love those grandmothers. Nichelle Henderson is an academic faculty advisor and teacher lecturer at a California State University, Los Angeles. She's a leader in the California Faculty Association, CFA, SEIU, 1983, where she is the CSULA chapter vice president and member of the statewide bargaining and representation teams. Nichelle is working on hunger and housing issues on the board level of the Community College District. Hi, Nichelle.
Thank you, Tammy. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nichelle Henderson. I am a trustee on the LA Community College Board. We have 9 colleges, and we educate just under 200,000 students annually, which makes us the largest community college district in the free world. The community colleges, especially with the onset of the COVID pandemic, we know all too well the ever-increasing struggles of our students as they deal with overcoming food insecurity and housing insecurity. In an effort to overcome that, the community colleges, we offer food pantries at our campus, at our colleges, as do many others in the area. LA County is a feeder for LACCD because we have 9 colleges. We have food pantries. During the COVID pandemic, our foundations hosted food drives and food distributions where we had grocery stores and other outlets that provided fresh foods and vegetables for our students that we gave out. We understand that it is not, that the solution to overcoming food insecurity is a larger issue, as has been said. Our students deal with homelessness and housing insecurity. A lot of our students are older with children, single parents. We have a number of justice-involved people. We have former foster youth. So we deal with people that have issues that go beyond being unhoused and not having sufficient food. So when we think about food insecurity, we're really literally thinking about not having adequate food, but our students deal with hunger. And when you are forced to consider paying for tuition or purchasing books and paying fees as opposed to buying food, for most of us, we would say that's a no-brainer. We won't go to school. But many of our students, that is their goal and their dream and their aspiration because they understand that education is truly the key to their future. And at the community colleges, we want desperately to make sure that our students are able to be successful. So in keeping with that, we work diligently to connect our students with resources such as LA County 211, where they have direct access to food, housing, childcare, and financial assistance. We, again, understand that there's no one-size-fits-all for any human being. Many of our solutions have to be individual-centered as well as community-centered. But we are very committed to making sure that our students are able to achieve their dreams and literally live, because housing is important to us, as well as making sure that you are able to eat. So I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here before you today and engage in this very much needed discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Nichelle. The Reverend Pastor Kelvin Sauls is an ordained elder in the California Pacific Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. He is the former senior pastor at Holman UMC on the City Commission of LAHSA and currently serves as director of interfaith initiatives at Community Health Councils in Los Angeles. And I know all too well, Pastor Sauls and I have worked together on sending food to Houston for Hurricane Harvey in 2017. So we've worked together on hunger. So please, Pastor Sauls.
Thank you, Tammy. Hope for Houston, that's what it was called. We had a great time with that. Good morning, everybody. It is indeed a joy for me to be here. Let me start off by just, expressing appreciation to the team and staff at Housing, is a Human Right, and our folk at the AIDS Healthcare Foundation, for convening us as they continue to coordinate, how we can creatively but intentionally respond to the challenge of housing and food insecurity. I serve as a proud board member, of AHF, and so it's just great to be able to be a part of that group of righteous rebels. If you, like me, you've had to adjust to Zoom and meeting virtually, and I know we all have our stories about that, but probably the one that's the most frustrating to me is the one where, you start talking and then you realize that you've been muted or you haven't unmuted yourself. I mean, I'll be talking up a storm, and then, when I get a break, somebody said, "Can you unmute yourself?" I'm like, oh, man. Well, today is unmuting time. And it is about the amplification of voices. For too long have the voices that seek to talk about this epidemic before the pandemic, have these voices been marginalized and muted. And so here we are together, and I'm looking forward to listening, to learning, and to see how we can move from this place to see how it is that we can, intentionally respond to this moral crisis, because that's what it is. We got to call it what it is, especially for us here in the city and the county of Los Angeles, where we are surrounded with opulence, influence, as the second largest city, in the country and in the state, that has an economy that rivals, several countries. We talk about a nation state. When you hear the governor talk, he talks about a nation state because of who we are, here in California. It is no secret, as I've been doing my work in South Los Angeles around houselessness and hunger, that this is indeed a structural and an institutional challenge. We need to call it for what it is. We cannot continue to stand in the gap relying on the charity, of those. We're grateful for charity. What we need to move towards is policy and systems change, because people don't decide to become homeless. It is not an accidental experience to one day wake up and you don't have adequate food to consume. Right before the pandemic, as we gathered folk in the Manchester Broadway, community of South Los Angeles to begin to do focus groups about what's going to be your number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 concerns, as we prepare ourselves for the onset of COVID-19. The first 2 concerns, priorities, were food insecurity and houselessness. And so we had to begin, to organize ourselves as to how do we respond, with those 2 or to those 2 challenges. These challenges, the small crisis is multiracial, even though here in the city and county of Los Angeles, we know that it affects black people more than any other population. Just look and see, at the statistics, and the Los Angeles Housing Services Authority has done the research on that with the task force on homelessness and black people. It is generational. It ain't just young folk that are hungry or houseless. It's also our elderly and everybody in between. It is regional. It's not just urban, it is rural. It's hitting the suburban areas and so many other spaces and places where we find our sisters and our brothers. And so I hope that our conversation, our listening today as we are being unmuted, will help us to see how we can come together and build liberative relationships and partnerships to see how we can disrupt the drivers of disparity that continues to feed the root causes of housing and hunger insecurity. For me, it is a spiritual matter. My spirituality is one that centers around the least of these. And so we start with listening to, learning from, and leverage the insight of those who have the lived experience and are the closest in proximity to these two challenges to see how we can listen to the most affected as we look for strategic and long-term sustainable solutions. I look forward to our time together and to listening and learning with you as we continue to fight forward in our unmuted disposition of what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Sauls. Unfortunately, when I'm on those Zooms, I'm always thinking, oh, darn, I should have muted. Saying a little too much there. I should have muted myself. I should have muted. I'm yelling at people in the background, and the people are listening to me call out to the dog. These Zooms are something to get used to. But we're here in person now. And so, as the Reverend said, we can unmute today and talk about homelessness, housing, and hunger with the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. Listening, learning, and leveraging from the powers that be on this stage. And so this is a good thing. Lauren is down here, our timekeeper, so we will move to the testimonies. And I'm sure you all have been debriefed on what the rules are, but it's 3 to 5 minutes each. Stay as close as possible to the 3 to 5 minutes. Lauren will keep your time so that you will know how much you have left, or, if you don't have much to say, sometimes less is more. It gets the job done just the same. So 3 to 5 minutes for each person. And if you don't happen to get what you had to say done within those 3 to 5 minutes, then remember that there is a Q&A. And so our hearing board will be asking you questions that you could probably chime in on with what you had left to say, or if it still remains applicable. All right, we good? We ready? Miss Norman Guyton, where are you?
Hi, right here.
Norma or Norma? Norma. Okay, Norma.
Hi, my name is Norma Gaitan, and I am a resident of Los Angeles.
Is her microphone on?
It's muted.
She's muted.
Unmute.
And we're not even on Zoom. How'd that work?
Hi, my name is Norma Gaitan, and I am a resident of Los Angeles County all my life, living in East LA. And as a single parent, I do struggle so much to feed my kids, because even working as a part-time or full-time is not enough to support my family. And for me, it's very important, the housing, that it is a human right that we need. And what else? I don't know what else to say, but I do struggle a lot in my life. I have 3 kids, and for me, it's so important that I'm I'm also on the waiting list for the housing. My kids are getting more big and they need space, and especially because they're in school. And my kids are, one of my two girls they have honor rolls in their schools, and I need right now I'm in a waiting list for the housing, and hopefully I could get a place for my kids because they need more space because they need space for they go be on doing their homeworks, and all this pandemic, it's been hard for them because they don't have no desks. They have to be on their bed doing their homework, and I have two kids in high school, and they have good grades, and all this pandemic was difficult for them because they don't have a comfortable place to study, but hopefully they could go back because I do want them to go back, and for the past week they were going 2 days out of the week. For me, it's very important, the housing, because like being a single parent, not even working a full time, how are you gonna pay a rent of $1,800 being a single parent? And maybe if I was to have a career, because I didn't finish college, but when the pandemic is like this fall, I'm thinking of going to occupational to study a short career, because not even like I don't know, like maybe if I would have a better career, maybe I could afford for a place to live for my kids, but as working as full-time or part-time, it's so difficult to pay rent by myself, because I live with my parents. If it wasn't for my parents, I don't know where I'm gonna be with my kids and I, because being a single parent for 13 years is not an easy job. But I always have faith in God. Things are gonna get better. Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. Christopher Vanek.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? I'm Christopher Vanek. Tammy, thank you. Wonderful job. I'm really honored to be here. This is my first panel and speaking with legislators and stuff like that. A little bit about myself. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, Van Nuys. I have a small family, my mom and my dad. I am first-generation Colombian.
Speak up a little louder, Christopher.
Yes, I am first-generation Colombian on my mom's side. I'm very fortunate to have attended private school and get a good education. When I graduated, I did not have the luxury of going to college, so I chose to do makeup and hair. I've been very successful in my job. I freelanced on set and in salons. I toured with Macy Gray for 6 years and then got into cosmetic sales. I also suffer from substance use disorder. I'm in recovery. And in 2019, my life imploded. I was in a very abusive relationship. I'm a victim of domestic violence. I had to take a leave of absence from work in 2019, and at the end of 2019, I was let go. And then when COVID hit, I lost everything. I lost my home. I almost lost my life. And I'm currently a full-time student at Valley College. I'm very fortunate for the services that they've given me to be able to attend school. But
Take your time. You're good. You're good.
Thank you.
Take your time.
Hunger and homelessness is real. And, if it weren't for the Department of Rehabilitation, if it weren't for fee waivers, if it weren't for the Veterans Services Office, students with disabilities, I would not be able to rebuild my life right now. I'm very fortunate to be able to stay with family and be able to be fed by them and housed by them. Not everybody has that luxury. Valley College does give me money they give gift cards for groceries. SNAP is a wonderful thing. GR helps. But it's not enough. It is not enough. If I did not have my mom and my dad, who are 68 and 80 respectively, I would be living under an overpass because my car got repossessed in COVID. Like I said, I'm very honored to be here. I do have some ideas that I would love to share. I'm grateful, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Christopher, for being so transparent, but also for acknowledging those particular benefits that have assisted you as well. We appreciate that because I'm sure a lot of people would want to know about those, although we acknowledge that it's not enough. Thank you so much for that. Carlos Mariquin.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to be here among so many good people. I'm going to get right into this. It's very eye-opening, the experiences that we have seen throughout the pandemic. But let's make it clear that these issues that we saw during the pandemic have been happening for a long time. It's just that now the pandemic was able to bring it out to the open, the real issues that people are facing out there. I help run a food bank here in Southern California, Urban Partners Los Angeles, one of the largest food banks, walking food banks, perhaps in the state or the nation. We're serving at our peak time around 2,000 families. We provided groceries for an entire week. One of the things that I saw that moved me so much was to see the amount of people that literally came in the day before to stand in line so they can receive groceries. We opened our doors on Saturdays at 7 o'clock in the morning. People were in line to receive food at 6 o'clock at night. I'm talking about spending 12 hours in line so that they can have groceries. There is a major problem with that. It's heartbreaking. I would arrive down there at midnight, and when I saw our seniors sleeping on the sidewalk so they can get a box of food, that's heartbreaking. But let us not fool ourselves. This is again a problem that has been going on for years, and many people have suffered in silence. We're talking about an issue that doesn't discriminate. You know, it affects everyone. I was able to talk to these people and to hear the connections between one issue to the other. The fact that they had to make decisions between buying food or buying medicine, or perhaps not even afford to have a roof over their heads because now they're worried to be evicted. And so again, these are the things that we are seeing. Through Urban Partners Los Angeles, we're able to also support other communities. People were reaching out to our organization. I would be in touch with so many community leaders throughout Southern California, asking them what are some of their needs, and they're all saying the same thing. We need resources. We're lacking resources. We don't have enough food. Our food lines, are big, and there's little that we're able to give them. Fortunately, through Urban Partners Los Angeles, we're able to get a little extra as we're getting food ourselves for area that we're serving. So when we're talking about food insecurity, we're talking about deep problems that the nation is facing, our counties facing, our state are facing. So thank you again for those that are here that can influence into making decisions for policies that addresses these issues, including low wages, including housing issues. All those things are connected. So it's a humongous problem, but I think that we are in the right step moving forward because we are listening now. We are on mute. Thank you.
Carlos, we want to thank you for the work that you do at the food bank. Thank you so much. I can imagine how it must feel to walk at midnight and see a line forming already, and maybe or maybe not being able to even facilitate the amounts of people that are in that line. So thank you for sharing with, that information with us today. Michael Flood.
Hi, good morning. My name is Michael Flood. I'm the CEO of the Los Angeles Regional Food Bank, and thanks for this invitation to present to you, and definitely appreciate our fellow presenters in their moving testimony of this really critical issue. If you're not familiar with the LA Regional Food Bank, we've been around for quite some time, since 1973. Gentlemen started with a pickup truck and picking up food and distributing it to people who needed it. The issue of food surplus and food waste has been with us for decades and decades. And that's how food banks around the country really got established, larger regional food banks. So fast forward to today, we provide food to 700 partner agency sites, food pantries, soup kitchens, shelters, smaller food banks, older adult programs, children's programs, and the like. And we also run direct service programs for older adults, including home delivery, not meals as much as groceries for those who are still cooking. For children, summer lunch is going on right now, after school meal, backpack programs, and the like, and how really the work has transitioned significantly in the last 16 months is just the huge demand, increased demand in food assistance, who I think everyone has spoken to already. We started moving some of the mobile distributions to large drive-through distributions that you've probably seen on the news. And about a year ago, a little over a year ago, we knew how bad the situation got so quickly when we held a distribution at the Forum in Inglewood, and 7,560 families came through in a 4-hour period. We had to keep dispatching trucks from our distribution center to make sure, and on that day, I'm happy to announce that everyone was served. Everyone went away with food. So it does take all of us to really make a difference in this work. We're still, even though things have improved, just a couple of things I just want to highlight. Our unemployment rate in Los Angeles County is 11%. We are appreciably higher than the state, and we're much higher than the federal average. So that puts a lot of pressure on the budgets of individuals, families, and households throughout Los Angeles County. The other issue I wanted to mention, as some have spoken to already, is this issue of food insecurity, where people are making the decisions between their basic expenses, rent, medication, utilities, transportation, and food. And too often, food is just what's left in the budget, and that's where the shortfall comes to play. In a good economic situation, 1 in 5 people in Los Angeles County were experiencing food insecurity. 1 in 5. That was good economic times, right? USC's been tracking food hardship, insecurity since the pandemic hit, and they saw at the peak of last year, 1 in 4 people were struggling to feed themselves. So as some of the other panelists have already, I think, absolutely hit the mark, we had a problem before the pandemic hit, a huge problem, and a problem that disproportionately hit low-income communities and communities of color. And coming out of the pandemic, those communities largely are worse off now than they were going into the pandemic. So we have our work cut out for us. I'm sure later, I know there's other panelists that will speak to the issue of, again, the unhoused situation. I just want to highlight the issue of housing instability, because that's the step before homelessness and unhoused. And I'm sure you're going to hear from someone, I don't think there's a most recent number with the pandemic occurring. But again, this is a situation where a high percentage of households prior to the pandemic were housing unstable, just like they were food insecure. And if you're living on that edge, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna have a very difficult time. Finally, we're very much involved in policy. We spend a lot of time on the CalFresh program, which is the traditional food stamp program. We partner with school districts. We partner with LA County and cities So that's another important piece of this. In terms of those of us in the nonprofit sector, we can't do this alone. There's no way we're going to end hunger ourselves as one organization and a network of agencies. It's going to take the government partners, it's going to take private sector, it's going to take civic and social organizations to come together and solve the dual issues of food insecurity, housing instability that leads to an unhoused situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you for the work that you're doing out there. Thank you for serving. Adriana Cabrera.
Can you hear me?
Just fine.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Adriana Cabrera. I am the co-founder of South Central Mutual Aid. I've been organizing in the city of Los Angeles for 16 years, since I was 14 years old. And during the pandemic, or prior to the pandemic, we see, that there's a lot of inequity in access when it comes to affording a place to rent. I myself faced housing insecurity prior to the pandemic, where I was renting, they sold the building, and I went to see about 27 places, or housing places, where I did not qualify to live, and I have a decent job. I work for the city of Los Angeles, so my pay is average, right? And I wanted to find a place in South Central. It's the community where I grew up in. I had love for my community, and I've been organizing. And so, through all those times that I went to see housing, I came across a lot of people that, did not have the possibility to even afford, or even being considered for the application process. And so we came together to kind of, address the issue. We formed South Central Mutual Aid, which is an autonomous collective composed of indigenous people from South Central LA. These are people who are immigrants. These are people who were formerly homeless and are now back on their feet, but it's also people who are struggling with hunger and food insecurity, with housing and food insecurity. So we noticed that our government has failed us. We don't go that far. Just recently, the FBI apprehended some council members due to corruption and looting that was taking place. So we feel that, when you have communities that have been historically, not been appropriately represented, and then you have some type of representation, and then you see the news and you see all the pieces together. So we noticed that a lot of the efforts that were being thrown to helping people during the pandemic were not reaching the people it was supposed to be reaching. So we decided to put ourselves in the forefront. We risked our lives during the pandemic before the vaccine to meet people where they're at. We organized with the homeless encampments. We made maps of every single encampment and identify leaders and heard their struggles. Why were they there? Through the whole pandemic, we've heard their feedback about the approach the LAHSA and all these organizations are taking to help them, get back on their feet. A lot of it is dehumanizing, and I have to have intervention. I do it out of love, and everybody else there is not getting paid. But we have to have these type of actions because, unfortunately, the people leading these efforts are disconnected from our community. Their approach is like either you take the housing or tomorrow you're going to be meeting a sweeping, right? And people need to be treated with love. A lot of the people facing homelessness are there because life got hard, right? I've come across a lot of people that were suicidal, and I was so thankful to see them the week after because I gave them food. And so small actions like that make a big difference. We're very thankful for Urban Partners who helped us get food. We noticed that right now, they had supporting legislation that gave rent relief. There was an application out there, economic relief for businesses, but all of that was not reaching communities that are low income, that have illiteracy. People don't know how to fill out those forms. So we were out there hosting workshops, helping people, letting them know this is what this word means. Small things like that make an impact. So we were able to also provide food to about 5,000 families. We drove to their homes. We also, in the summer right now, there was heat waves. We collected money to help people just survive the heat waves by having cold water. When it was raining, people were facing a lot of especially illness with the whole pandemic. There was a lot of people who were sick. The homeless community didn't get super sick, but they were elderly who didn't have a blanket when it was raining. And so, they get their stuff swept away. We would bring in blankets, and then the next day it would be taken away. We also noticed that there was a lot of crime when we spoke to the homeless people. Some of them get taxed up for having attended the sidewalk by gang members. So there's a lot of crime as well happening. Another thing is, in our communities, we have about 56% of the population who does not have a high school diploma. So it tells you what type of jobs they have. A lot of the jobs are backbreaking jobs that pay the minimum wage. And so one of the solutions that we've seen is to be able to advocate for home ownership, for literacy. We want to see more programs that can teach, especially young people, right? Because a lot of the people who are in communities that are facing a lot of poverty are people who are immigrants. And some of the resources that are being provided by the federal government that's funding a lot of initiatives excludes them from having access to some of those resources. So there's a new wave of homeless people that are coming. They're living in their cars, they're living in RVs, and we found that a lot of them are immigrants. So we also want to be able to provide economic opportunities or even educational opportunities, like you mentioned before. And we were able to mobilize all the women our group was mostly women for some reason, that were part of our South Central Mutual Aid, and we got them enrolled in community college. They're taking a community development course. And so there's people that want to progress themselves, but then there's not a lot of funding for them. Because of immigration status, they gotta choose between, having their baby, being left somewhere else. So, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I hope, that we take some action to help these people. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Ryan Corners. Ryan? Kim Olson?
Thank you, Susie, for inviting me, and Housing is a Human Right for
A little bit
holding this.
closer
Sorry.
to the mic there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Okay,
you now.
sorry.
Yeah. Or just move it a little bit, yeah.
I'm kind of loud, I don't want to
You
get
can
too
stay
close. Okay, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for having this panel. It's incredibly important. I'm with West Valley Homes, yes. We primarily work in the West San Fernando Valley, and I know Senator Stern. He came out with us last Thanksgiving to deliver food to some of our encampments in the West San Fernando Valley. We go out every week, every Sunday. We reach about between 425 to 500 unhoused folks. We bring food, we bring supplies, we bring information. The cornerstone of our work is food. Right? You build this human connection. We all need food. We all eat. And from that food, we're able to build trust. We're able to build community. We're able to build broader programs from which we have been able to get people into housing, from where we've been able to get folks who live in their vehicles to get their vehicles legal so that their shelter is not going to be towed. Especially, we have a moratorium coming up here in Los Angeles, where they are going to start towing vehicle dwellings again. That should not happen. We have historic heat waves coming. We had heat of 108 degrees in the San Fernando Valley last week. We took out frozen water to our unhoused neighbors, in addition to our regular outreach. People can die in these temperatures living outside. When we talk about food insecurity, we also need to be talking about water. I live in an area with little to no shade. It is hazardous. Our folks, when you talk about transportation, when you talk about these things, when you talk about food insecurity, you want someone to go to a pantry in 120 degrees? Good luck. How are you going to get the food home? Right? During the pandemic, we didn't even have buses running. So at the beginning of the pandemic, our unhoused folks called me crying, completely freaked out. Where am I going to get food? The churches, they shut down the community meals. Pantries shut down. Volunteers weren't showing up. People did not want to put themselves at risk. And I don't blame them, but our government left them out in the cold. We set up curfews without considering that they needed to go to the market and that the hours that our in-house folks go to the market are different from us, right? Our volunteers include unhoused folks, and they're saying, you have to do something. Like, nobody stepped up. So we found folks. We grew our volunteer base. We found food. So where our government and our traditional structures took a huge step back, our grassroots organizations here in LA took a huge step forward. And I know you're going to talk about it too, because we did. And I know you're going to talk about it too, because everybody just left us with no resources, with nothing, except for the LA Regional Food Bank, right? Everybody else, they left town. So we went out, we put ourselves at risk to bring out food, to bring out supplies, to bring out people information, because they closed our showers, they closed bathrooms. In CD12, where I live, there were no bathrooms. There has not been a legal place to use the bathroom until recently. No porta potties, nothing. Imagine that, right? These are absolutely, Pastor, these are moral decisions. This is not necessary. There is enough food in this county to feed people. We need to get the food to where it needs to be. That, if I'm going to ask you for one thing, I'm going to ask you for two things. I'm going to ask you to support grassroots organizations who are doing the work, who are building the trust, who are out there in those encampments. Pandemic, no pandemic, 121 degrees last summer, our people were out there calling 911, by the way, because our folks were suffering from the heat. People can die in those temperatures. My phone stopped working. It had a big thermometer on it that said it was too hot. Right? If your phone doesn't work in those temperatures, your body probably doesn't either. So I am telling you, support grassroots organizations. Get the money directly to them. We are 100% volunteer, and we include unhoused folks. I have unhoused folks out there today caseworking their neighbors to get their cars legal so they're not going to lose them when this moratorium comes up. Get us transportation. Get the food to where it needs to be. LA Regional should not be the sole organization responsible for getting this food out. There is food available through tons of organizations all over this city, daily, if not weekly, that does not get to where it needs to go. We all are on these lists. We have this. Can you get it? Nope. I don't have a truck. Nope. I don't have refrigeration. It is here. 2022, we have a new law coming into effect, SB 1383, where they're going to have businesses make food available. How are we going to get it where it needs to go? How are we going to do that? So those are my two big asks for you. Hollywood Food Coalition is one organization I want to bring out.
I was just going to say it.
They supply me with my lunches on Sunday.
Yes.
So Bonnie, who runs that, is amazing. So they were getting 7,000 lunches every Sunday. We're down to 4,000 right now. Our need has not decreased, but our donations have. Our support has. We are begging folks to get involved. We need folks to volunteer. Call Hollywood Food Coalition. Give Bonnie all your money. She deserves it. She gets food out all over this city, not just every Sunday, every day. Every day. They are amazing. Bonnie makes not one dime from this work, by the way. Not one dime. We're all volunteers, and we're out here hustling and begging you to support us.
Thank you.
That's what we need. Sorry.
Thank you. If I didn't learn anything, it was give all the money to Bonnie or give all the food to Bonnie, and the resources need to go to Bonnie. So we heard you. We heard you. Alberto Taitoa? Am I saying that correct?
Klatoa.
Klatoa.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Alberto Klatoa. I'm a community organizer, social entrepreneur, historian, artist, and really active in my community. My family actually was one of the people who organized to try to save the largest urban farm in the nation here in South Central Los Angeles about 15 years ago. It was a 14-acre urban farm that fed 350 families, and it was a beacon of hope for lots of people. And my organization now, as the founder and executive director, we really want to redefine land use in the city of Los Angeles. I think that urban farms can play a vital role in fighting food insecurity and also being centers and hubs of distribution. I think we need more investment. We need buildings, right? I agree with her comment. Food needs to be decentralized, so the city could invest in inviting community centers where there could be refrigeration, commercial vehicles where we could transport and distribute all the food. I'm a big believer that we've been excluded from a lot of conversations in the development of our cities. We do not have any parks. We do not have trees in our neighborhoods, right? Everything's related to what everybody's been talking about in this panel. And I think that it's time for our voices to be heard. I think we need to be included in conversations, and we need to be at the forefront. We need to build projects that are led by the community, and we need funding. Funding is a big barrier for food justice work. If we don't have money, if we don't have buildings, we cannot do that work. And that is the thing that's really gonna build a systematic change. I've been fighting for food justice for 17 years of my life in South Central Los Angeles. We have more liquor stores than grocery stores in our communities. We have redlining and systematic policies that continue to impact our communities now. The goal is to build community land trusts where it could be used for housing, but also could be used as green spaces and parks. I think that's a perfect solution to support and building equity. And also, a lot of these developments are getting built in our neighborhoods. There's different levels of affordable housing, and people don't understand that. So these developers get their projects passed saying, oh, it's gonna have 2 units, 3, 5 units of affordable housing. Is that really who's gonna be able to afford $3,000 rent on luxurious condos here in the city of Los Angeles? So I think it's important that we also be able to critique elected officials, but also work with them to create policies that are gonna create systematic change. And it's necessary, it's time for bold leadership. It's time to really invest in communities that have been disenfranchised, and also a time to give people the money that they serve to build those community hubs that are gonna provide benefits and resources to the communities. And I think that one of the things that we started as an organization is land access is food justice. If we don't have access to any kind of land to build either a warehouse for being a food distribution center, or we don't have community gardens for green space as well too, I think urban farming can be a great vehicle to really time in and intersect all of these issues in our communities, right? We don't have parks, we have community gardens. We grow our own food. It's also about teaching our kids how to eat healthy, right? I think people don't know how to cook, period. Right. Like, I think that's something is really blow minding when you ask youth, do you know how to cook something? They're like, I don't know how to cook. I think so we need to also have those life skills back in our curriculums. So teach people life skills, because there's a lot of things that our education system does not teach, and one of them is not to cook, not to do laundry. There's simple, basic things that a lot of youth don't know how to do. So I think it's important that we can kind of change some things that are not working, right? And I think it's important to give people money. I think funding is a big issue for everybody. And with funding, we could do so much, right? We could fund multiple distributions. And definitely, to me, I've seen urban agriculture as a vehicle to really push this agenda of more healthy eating, more access to healthy, nutritious food. And I think my task is to build on those legacies and continue to build that leadership, right? Because change does not happen overnight. My father started as an organizer trying to fight for the South Central Farm, and now I'm carrying out the next legacy, right? Taking it further, one step further. So I think it's important to also build leadership and identify leaders who are going to do the work and who are going to champion what needs to be happening in our community. And that change is needed now. So the leadership needs to step up, and we need to continue to advocate and find people who are going to help build that trust with the community, because there is a lot of distrust in community. People don't trust nonprofits. People don't trust the government, because they have been failing us for such a long time that it's important that we act now. And right now is the time to be bold and think out of the box. And I think that that's the only way we're going to create real change in our neighborhoods.
Thank you, Alberto. Thank you. Jackie Venters.
Again, I want to thank Susie for inviting me today. I'm speaking on behalf of my community, the beautiful city of Compton. We're coming back, you guys.
That's right.
I grew up in inner cities throughout my life, and I just remember a couple of you guys shared your experience with your grandparents giving away food. I'm gonna share mine with my mom, because I guess it's in my blood. I just remember as a little kid growing up in the inner cities that all these people used to come to our house and my mom used to give them a brown bag or a plate. And she used to say, I don't have no money, but I could feed you. Everywhere we moved, that's what I remember, just feeding people, because as I got older, I'd see that it was a need for food, that everybody didn't have it. I relocated in Compton in 1982 because of a tragedy. I witnessed the murder of my husband. And that's when drugs had took over our community. And moving there, I'd seen kids. I had 2 little kids, and as they got older, all the kids used to come because dinner time, they wanted to eat. And I fed them, and as the time went on, I started looking at the parents on drugs, and the grandparents was taking care of the children with no funds. So I started a ministry where I was giving away food. I had a little truck. I used to go out to the Long Beach, and they used to load my truck up with food. I make like 10 trips till I fill up my front porch, and I come back and I make sure everybody had food. 2001, I started a nonprofit in the community, and we celebrated 20 years. But as the time went on, I seen that things became political in our community for us, the nonprofits. And I just want to share that I think our elected officials should get more involved with the grassroots organization versus reinventing the wheel. We had a bad situation this year, and it affected me personally, not with the funding, but because it was me and a few other organizations that was overlooked because of funding. An organization was given over $140,000 in our community that wasn't even providing food services prior. But because of our elected officials' greed, I'm saying, they gave this organization over $100 and something thousand that was inactive. They wasn't supposed to take the money anyway. We have 3 nonprofits. Mine is Inner City Child Development, United Hands, and Sylvia Nunn's Angels. We've been giving away food in the community for many, many years. I've been doing this since the 80s. We were overlooked, and we've been doing the work. This organization made the news this year because of throwing away food. They couldn't reach the community. I give away food every day. On Thursdays, we're at Watts Coffee House. We provide maybe like 200 families. Martha Bahara's United Hands provide maybe 2,000. The other agency, I don't have a number, but we were overlooked for funding, and my organization never got any funding, no building, but God always provide. I don't care what it is. He always provide for us. And I just thought it was very selfish that this happened, because this organization now is still giving away food. And the community is complaining about the food, the rotten food, because the grassroots organizations have been overlooked. They don't know where to go. You have to establish a relationship in your community to provide the services. You just can't come with no truckload of food and thinking you're getting ready to give it away, because you got to be able to reach the community. We reached the community, and I think that it wasn't fair that we were overlooked. I've been spending my own money for years and years, paying for trucks, bags, everything that we need, and I don't complain, because I'm doing it because it's in my heart. It's not because of I want recognition or I'm looking for something. But I think that we need to go back to some of these grassroots organizations and support them. I think that our homeless population, I purchased a little van so we could provide for our seniors, our handicaps. I have food delivered to them, and the disabled. We have people that we take food to every week. I get calls every day, but we have no support from our political elected officials, because it become personal. Politics shouldn't be part of giving food away. Compton is only 10 miles. I look at it as a village, a home, and we're all in it together, and we were supposed to support each other. We just, like they were saying, it's not a whole lot. Refrigerated trucks, That would help transporting food, because some things we can't pick up because we don't have the tools. I was told that we were upset because we didn't have everything that we needed, but you gave another organization everything, a building. You gave them a building, money, everything that they needed, but they can't give the food away. Support those that's doing the job.
Wow. What's the name of your organization?
My organization is Inner City.
I'm sorry, hold on, let me wait till the.
Inner City Child Development and Youth Foundation.
Inner City Child Development and Youth Foundation.
March the 19th, we celebrated 20 years in our community. But I'm gonna say I've been doing it all my life, you know.
I do have one question for you before we put the questions to the board here. You've never received funding. How are you supporting this organization?
Out my pocket, and you know, when we have events.
Have you ever received funding though?
Never. Last year was the first time, and that it was because of COVID that my organization, but I applied many times through the city and never from nobody. God is my witness, I have never ever received any funding, but you guys could check my history of the service that we provide in the community. I have a young lady here that if she's still here, she know me. I just ran into her today, but I work hard and there's no pay. But I love what I'm doing and I love my people. And it hurt me when I see that we're being taken advantage of. Right now we have a lot of corruption in our city and it's been addressed. And it's because of funding. You know, we need to make sure that the people that's doing the work, Dr. Dre, I'm sharing this, Dr. Dre gave us $200,000 and they manipulated the stipulations of receiving the funds so this Compton Chamber of Commerce could take the money. When they got on the news, we knew, I had the information that they were inactive from 2019 that was sent to our mayor. She knew, and that's who gave them the money. And it's wrong that they're doing this to us. We haven't did nothing, but we're not getting ready to bow down. And it's certain things I don't do, and I'm not getting ready to. I don't want to take nothing and feel like I owe you something. Because
I understand, Ms.
yeah,
Jackie.
so-
I think we all understand. I just wanted to make it clear to understand and hear the name of your organization again. So thank you so much for that. We're bringing Ryan Corners now. Ryan Corners? I feel like the Senate Judiciary hearings now, Ryan.
I apologize. I was told I was in the afternoon, but I'm happy to speak. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Corner. I'm with the Los Angeles Community College District with our illustrious trustee here. For years, we've been trying to work on student basic needs with the recognition that that is one way in which we improve student success. If we look at the needs that students face outside of the classroom, those are often the things that interfere with students being successful inside the classroom, and that's what we need to address. In 2016, our board called on the district to conduct a comprehensive assessment for student basic needs. This was recognition of the impact of poverty, housing, and food insecurity on our students and how it associated with student success. Since our initial assessment, we have continued to build supports for students, broaden our awareness of the issues that are unique to our student population and community college, and to advocate for policy change. Today, we know that 64% of our students face basic needs security issues, with higher rates for students of color, LGBTQIA, parents, and former foster youth. In fact, 48% worry about food running out before the end of the month. That's almost half of our students. 31% could not pay their full rent. That's almost a third of our students. How are students supposed to learn when they're worried about that? Pre-COVID, colleges provided 24 tons of food per week to our students, and it wasn't enough. And that was thanks in cooperation to many of the folks here that have local food banks. We have collaborated with Shower of Hope and LA Room and Board to provide housing to our students, but this is a Band-Aid on a systemic issue. We've worked with the county to help students gain access to CalFresh and housing services. But we do have to face that these systemic barriers are what need to be addressed if we're going to be successful with our students. At the time of its inception, federal student aid, the Pell Grant, actually covered 120% of all costs of a community college student. That includes housing, that includes food. Not just the cost of tuition, but actually what it takes to go to college. Now that number is only 60%, a 40% gap that students have to figure out how to fill. The Cal Grant is only aligned with tuition costs. So even in our own state, we're failing to recognize the true cost of what it is to go to college, and I think you heard that from our student today. And in fact, many of our students, because they come after being out of high school, don't even qualify for the Cal Grant. We need to fix the student aid process and to reflect on the true cost of education. And in fact, we do have a bill, AB 1456, which is in the legislature right now, which is a step in the right direction. It provides additional access to students like Christopher and also more money to the students who are in the community college system. This will be one small piece that will help students get housing and food secure. In terms of housing needs, we need to recognize that we set different rules for students than we do for other members of the public. We have liaisons on our campus that help us navigate the system, and oftentimes what they have to tell our students is that they don't qualify. If an LGBTQIA student leaves their house because it's mentally abusive, they don't qualify because they weren't hit. That's a problem. That's a strong problem. We need to understand that post-secondary education should count as a qualified activity for housing and food, not just work. Because it's actually education that pushes students out of generational poverty. And we've set up a system that makes them choose between the small services that are available or being able to have a career and a life where they're out of poverty. It shouldn't be a choice, it should be an and. And so I just want to end by saying we have had successes in collaborative partners. It's been great, we've done amazing work. We've learned from the expertise of people who work within housing and food insecurity. And together I know we can achieve this systemic change, but we have to do so working within our community and recognizing that it's the system that needs to change and not just a simple strategy or how to implement food and housing insecurity processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. And so our board will now ask questions to those of you who are witnesses there, and anyone can start.
I'll start. I'm interested in the community college situation. We have a Santa Monica College in Santa Monica. And I want to ask about two things in community colleges, and the first is about housing, and the second is about food. So I can tell you that when I started on the Santa Monica City Council, our community college had no way for students who receive food stamps, and I understand that everybody doesn't, to spend them because they had no vendors that took them. And I wonder if anything is being done at the community college district to change that LA-wide.
Yes, our colleges are EBT ready. That was part of what we did with our partnership and based on some direction from our board. And in fact, LA City College is the first community college in the nation to have a store that is EBT ready, meaning they meet the federal qualifications for students to walk into their student store and pick up a yogurt or pick up some basic need supplies.
Well, and that's sort of what I was asking you. I mean, other than LA City College, are there other sources at the community colleges to?
The other 8 colleges, along with City College, have the hot meals program, but City College is the first to also have store access.
And my second question is about housing, because my understanding is that 20% of community college students are unhoused, and I wonder what we're doing to respond to that.
So absolutely. One is we do have LAHSA representatives on our campus that serve as liaisons, but oftentimes they're faced with the duty of informing our students that they don't qualify or they only qualify for temporary housing. That makes it very difficult to plan a long-term response to education. We also have partnerships with community partners where we place students directly in housing, and that has worked well, but it's very small scale.
But what I'm asking about is particularly in terms of the new mental health needs of younger people, et cetera. It seems to me that community colleges should be providing some sort of supportive housing, transitional housing, et cetera, for students who are unhoused, for students who have special needs, for et cetera. And I wonder if there's any discussion of that in the community college system.
That is a discussion that's taking place. In fact, our board had a discussion about student housing just last week with their committee of the whole. There's many different opportunities out there, and we think that some of the statewide decision-making will allow for us to be more creative in this realm, and we just need to find the right fit.
Thanks very much.
That's it.
Pastor, do you want to jump in?
No, go ahead. I'll go.
Okay. Yeah, one of the benefits I would say of having the largest state surplus in California history is that I think we can do something about some of these problems you all are laying out here. And I think we can change the paradigm for how money moves and isn't all top down, but it's bottom up, starting in the community. So I got to tell you, this has been a very helpful panel. And I guess I want to throw out a few ideas and maybe get a reaction from folks. Some of what we're trying to work on from Sacramento, in addition to having more flexibility and discretion within the LACCD and the community college budget, few different puzzle pieces we're putting together, but essentially become a $1 billion community-based package that approaches this issue from a few different buckets. So there's a $430 million push that Eduardo Garcia and I are leading. He represents the Imperial Valley and out in Coachella. And we're looking at working on sort of resiliency hubs or community-based models that could probably take into account everything from the urban greening and the urban farming to some of these extreme heat events that Kim's talking about. Trying to sort of find place-based work driven by CBOs in those communities to then sort of find these areas to deliver services. And I don't see why you don't throw in a community kitchen on top. You want to talk about community land trust, you want to talk about community farming, you want to talk about community safety and support for hydration, but put on top of that those educational services. So that was a very good note. So I got that one written down here. For the training for young people to go do this work, there's a $400 million resiliency core program that's essentially leveraging AmeriCorps to let young people go out and pay for college debt-free if they give the state a year of service working in hunger. So trying to get ways to get young people into those jobs, maybe at a gap year or even to pay for the rest of college. So I'm curious about feedback there, whether you think young people will jump on that. And then the other big piece of it is I'm working with Santiago. I think he's the Assemblymember Santiago, might be the Assemblymember for this area. So he's trying to look at how we shake up or go more community-based in terms of how we move food assistance, especially for undocumented communities who don't have same access to the county-based programming, right? So if we can start working on freeing up CBOs and the NGOs out there to get, say, prepaid cards, that bill's AB 221. So I want to put that on your radar. That's moving through the Senate now. Some of you may even be working on it. SB 108 is a Melissa Hurtado legislation that I'm working with her, and she's out of Fresno, where they have a very acute food insecurity crisis, but it's really going to assess the food access issue in a data-driven way. And I think to Kim's point and to Jackie's point, there's no reason we can't look at a decentralized model that's still data-driven. If you're doing 200 meals, but you're finding the right people, that 200 is a very efficient 200. That's a very powerful mechanism. Even if you're not doing the volume of 5,000 a day, or like you want to do LAUSD, they did 100 million last year, right? And we went to FEMA for that and got them $250 million to backfill 100 million. But 200 matters too if you're finding the right people, if you're spotting the gap. So I got the note here on maybe looking at updates to that legislation to sort of look at how we bring data in from the field, from the work that you all are doing as organizers, and maybe how to use that and make the case, right, for a little bit different model. So those, oh, and the last one to mention to you all, if you're interested, Sydney Comlager, working on it's AB 118 from when she was in the assembly. Now she's Senator Comlager, former LACC board member with you, Ms. Henderson. So Sydney, we're running the Crises Act to sort of have a multi-jurisdictional approach through Department of Social Services to start funding, say with the money that, say, under Measure J should be going to offsetting some of these systemic drivers, but also state funds. If we can use DSS in a smarter way and fund these county programs, we can start doing this hub-based work. I really believe is the future. And so each one of you know things about your community. So flipping the model a little bit, ideas for y'all to consider going forward. And love your feedback and testimony as we keep pushing on the work, but thank you, yeah.
Can I say something real quick? Just to add what he was saying, also one thing to notice is that the farming population in the United States is aging out. So we need also people, young people, to attract them into the agricultural business. I also worked in the Central Valley, Bakersfield, Arbin. I'm familiar with the Imperial Valley as well too, and how some of those communities who are one of the largest growers of food are also facing food insecurity, which is very crazy. And you're like, what? Like they are the growers, and yet the people who live in those communities are not getting access to healthy, nutritious food. So I think it's important that we do invest in our youth, first of all, because I think that we should also create job opportunities in these industries to attract people, and this could be viable careers. People really enjoy growing food sometimes, and urban agriculture is something that's been picking up because we want to also localize our food systems, which is a big issue, right? A lot of our food gets driven from miles away or even through ships, right? So the carbon food traffic is also related to, the issue of climate justice as well too. So more people, our generation is more, I guess, mindful of the environment, and they want to create new strategies, but we need funding opportunities. We need entrepreneurship development, right? Investment in those kind of green jobs. And I think that that's something that urban agriculture could do. And also we could collaborate with the farmers who work in the Central Valley or Imperial Valley and help them distribute their produce, because they are the ones who also were hardly impacted by COVID-19. A lot of farmers markets were closed, but then they opened, right? So a lot of small farmers didn't have the markets to distribute a lot of the contracts for hotels and schools phased out because they were closed, right? So I think that brings a point that we need collaboration in multiple levels, right? We could work for different cities to really create this vision and blueprint to create accessibility to our communities that are in need, and we could use also stimulate our local economy and create jobs. And I think that that's an excellent model that we could use. And our goal should be really to build a model that could be replicated across the globe, because food insecurity is not something that just happens here in the city of Los Angeles. It's a global pandemic. So I think that that's important to point out.
Could I make one comment, please, just on that? Senator Stern, I think all of the proposals you've outlined would make a difference. I think overall, the state has not invested in food in general, food systems, food infrastructure, which is ironic given how prolific we are in terms of growing and producing food. So the state has really not been there. They pass through federal funds. They've done a little bit with state general fund, but not a lot. So I think you're on the right track in looking at that. We hosted Assemblymember Santiago, AB 221, with other the undocumented bill, providing help to the undocumented community with other CBOs here in LA. We strongly support that bill and appreciate Assemblymember Santiago leadership in that. And we do have a lot of experience with AmeriCorps, and it's a very good program. Okay. And it leads to, I think, a pathway for some young people who want to move into a career around community organizing, running food, system, whatever the case may be. It's a good pathway for people to try it, have some support, have some training, and then determine when they come out of the program what the next step is. We've hired both AmeriCorps and Vista people on the food bank staff. Thank you.
So we're going to take one last question from our board and then break for lunch.
Yeah, I think, thank you so much. Let's give them another round of applause, please. I think one piece that really stood out to me that we would want to explore further in some form or fashion is how do we be intentional around tackling food and housing insecurity by way of proximity. It's clear through your testimony that the state capital is too far away from the proximity where people are hurting. It is clear that the county supervisor's room is too far away from where people are hurting. And it is clear now that city halls across the county, they are too, far away from where people are hurting. And so proximity becomes very, very powerful because it invites us to really, listen to those who are directly and most affected by, food and housing insecurity. And so having said that, I think the key piece around how to bring those who are in close proximity to these two crises, how to develop a strategy to organize us around issues of not just meeting the direct needs, which is important, but also around policy. We've talked for a while now around the Food Council, the Food Policy Council, and all of that. I don't know how effective that has been, but I'm really, hoping that we can figure out a way of trying to see, one, how we can get the resources to those who are doing direct services, whether it is by way of urban farming, which is more about moving people from just receiving food to actually providing food for themselves. So it's not just about feeding a person for a day, but really, how to help them to own the whole pond, instead of just catching fish for a day. Two, getting the resources to our grassroots organizations because of that proximity. I mean, I'm deeply disturbed, that you straight out of Compton, right? And you say that you haven't received funding and you've been so we need to talk, around there's a new mayor, right? So we need to figure out a way of how to facilitate, these relationships. Two, now, let that inform us for policy, because that's going to be key to get us to the systems change that we need to get to. I am with community health councils, and we are committed to this proximity piece. I mean, I think the slogan I'm going to be using is equity through proximity. How do we bring the resources as close as possible? We right now, last night we had a town hall, in Region 2, because we are the grantees, or we manage a contract for First 5 LA that's dealing with children 0 to 5. And so we, created a program called South LA Decides, which is participatory grant making. The community come up with the priorities, the community facilitates the allocation of the funds to those priorities, you see, in terms of that. And East Compton is one of our communities, so we need to figure out for the next funding cycle how to connect with it. South Central LA is part of that. So our vision is to get these resources to grassroots, around that. So I'm looking forward to see how we can, facilitate, this and need to hear more from you, around, some more effective strategies to be able, to do that. I think young people would be interested in agriculture if we make it sexy. I mean, I think that's very, very important. You know, and the final thing I'll say is, I was born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa. So during this pandemic, I was doing food distribution in South LA and facilitating resources through AHF's, you know, COVID emergency fund for food distribution in my community in South Africa. So yes, it is multinational, you know, around us. And I think we got to figure out, you know, how to connect it, you know, into being a global, you see, solution for how we move forward.
Thank you, Pastor. Can I, if I may?
Nichelle and John, I just wanted to make sure, did you guys want to get a question in?
I just wanted to say one thing before you go, if I may. It used to be called the Greater West Hollywood Food Coalition. And I'm working tooth and nail to bring them back to West Hollywood. They were chased out by white, affluent people who did not like homelessness outside of their $1 million homes or outside of their Target center. And that's the progressive change that I think we're seeing. You all are the heroes. First of all, we're the sadomasochists who just ask people to vote for us and then do whatever we got to do. But the important thing is that COVID showed us that COVID didn't break the system. The system was already broken. And that's something that we see as individuals. And I hope you all have a pen. My cell phone number is 920-527-8100. I don't know many people who give out their personal cell phone numbers, but if you have an idea, if you want to talk about something, give me a call, text me. My email is erickson@weho.org. West Hollywood gives tens of millions of dollars to our social service agencies because we're a contract service agency. So we give it to the grassroots. We started a coalition with Trans Latina Coalition, Trans Can Work, all of these organizations because of our specialty of who we are as a city. So we've created this model. That's how we've always been because of who we are. But if you have an idea, you want to talk about it, our job as electeds is to connect you to the resources with the funding, state, local, wherever. We've got an amazing mayor here from the city of Santa Monica and an amazing trustee here who does more than I could ever do in an entire day. But that is our role because our role is to make sure you who do the work have to do it. And any elected official should have to go to a food shelter, one, and hand out food, take public transportation to and from work for a solid month, and then 3, try to live on food stamps and food insecurity measures to feed and house and to feed themselves and their families. And if you do not do that as an elected official, you cannot speak about the policy. And if I can't speak to that, I need you. And we need more people who listen to you. So that's all I'm going to say.
Right on.
I just wanted to say that, first of all, thank you, because I think that some of the things that pretty much were highlighted here today is the need for grassroots to be able to have the resources that they need to be able to work. I tell you, the grassroots, the people, the community leaders have some of the most brilliant ideas to resolve a lot of these problems. The problem, the number one problem that all of us have working out there in the front lines is the lack of resources. We don't have the tools that we need to be able to do that. I will die to be able to have a warehouse that we can be able to have, stored stuff in there and mobilize whatever the needs are throughout our communities. Right now, we identified 7 hot spots in Southern California, food deserts, that people literally have to drive miles away just to be able to get to a grocery store. That should not be happening. We should be able to have mini markets where people will be able to walk to the corner and be able to buy vegetables. Things like this, we have the ideas, we need the resources. Thank you.
Go ahead, Nichelle.
So
Nichelle is going to wrap us up here.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment. Ms. Venners, I heard about your situation just about 45 days ago, and I've been offended and just pissed. It really was a travesty. And you are a true community servant. I wanted to say that. But I want to thank Dr. Ryan Corner from LACCD for highlighting some of the efforts that we are making towards dealing with our houseless, our homeless and our food insecure students. But to each of you, I think often the assumption is that elected officials are very wealthy and we're completely detached from real life, if you will. And many of us have come from the bottom and now we're here to help you. So I can say for myself, I've been on food stamps, I've been a single parent, I struggled to determine how I would pay tuition and purchase books and have food for my kids who are now adults. And we are listening to you. For all intents and purposes, you have preached to the choir. We are here for you. Please reach out to us for assistance, because it is our job to be connectors for you, to connect you to the services that help you do what you're doing better, because we don't know. We're not there with you on the ground in the grass. So just thank you all for being here, and thank you for your testimonies, because I think what you've done is burned a fire under each of us to recognize where we need to do better and do more in our own specific jobs. So thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your testimonies. Thank you to the board, and thank you to AHF for the community hearing homelessness, housing, and hunger.